Good. Welcome back to Backfire today. Good morning, John and Franklin. How are you?
Good morning.
Hey, Steve.
Good to see you guys back in the studio today. I hate to say it, but we lost a good radio announcer here recently, Luther Massengale.
Yeah, most people, well, not most people, almost everybody can't remember a day Luther wasn't there.
That's true.
Right. Luther gave the news every morning. I remember waking up to Luther giving the news a lot of times. But 92 years old, he'd been in radio since 1940. He had 70 years of broadcasting. He had reported the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That's pretty amazing that you go back that far, I think. But anyway, he was a good fellow. Something local, the SPCA's all and the BCSO are at it with each other, it looks like, with the dogs and cats again. So anyway, I noticed the banner had a lot of coverage on this cat and dog issue. I swear, I just don't know what we got to do to calm this thing down. But now they're saying, the way I read this article was that the Bradley County Sheriff's Department and the SPCA is not there to pick up stray animals, only dangerous animals. Is that the way you understood it?
It's not the way I understood originally. The intent was to be able to manage the stray and loose.
Well, now, I think they do pick up strays. I think it's dangerous animals that they don't pick up.
So it's the opposite. They'll pick up a loose animal, but not if he's dangerous.
Yeah, saying they don't have the equipment and so forth necessary to do that.
I don't think I read that way.
That's the way I understood it anyway.
Let me see if I've got that article here. Anyway, it goes on to talk about they'd had some 911 calls and they'd try to about animals, and they'd call the SPCA and couldn't get an answer, and 911 would after they get a call. So that was the big complaint, and then they thought they were being set up again. I don't know. There must be a group for and a group against, but both of them love animals that are fighting with each other with this deal.
Well, apparently they don't love animals enough to be able to put their personal differences aside and figure out how we do something productive to help take care of the animals.
I agree.
Yeah, I guess I'm just harsh on some of this stuff. I've been in organizations and people get their personal feelings in the way, and you kind of want to step back and go, look, are you being a benefit to our endeavor, or are you being a hindrance? Mm-hmm. If you're being a hindrance, either figure out how you can get past whatever your personal issue is and contribute to our goal, or get out. Mm-hmm. You know, the goal here is to help the animals.
Well, Dan Rawls, county commissioner, made a response that it was never part of the contract for the SPCA to pick up stray animals.
I don't know.
I don't. What are they supposed to be doing?
I don't know.
I suppose they're supposed to be housing the strays that have been picked up and trying to help adopt them out and so forth.
But who's supposed to pick them up?
I think that's something that they didn't consider on the front end when they changed the working governmental arrangement to the non-working governmental arrangement.
The working governmental rate for the non-working. Okay.
You know, it's
the wildly popular, successful one.
Well, here's the next question. What does Bradley County do with stray dogs and cats?
Well, according to what I read yesterday, apparently we are moving away from the no-kill city concept.
Look, it's I said this earlier, the no-kill thing is a wonderful goal, but it's probably unapproachable because It's like I fussed a year or two ago when they got rid of the hog hunting season. The problem with that concept was hogs have 3 litters a year. They have anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 piglets in a litter. It's just a fact that if you don't do something, the population's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Same thing with this. We'd love to not kill any of these animals, but people aren't spaying and neutering their animals. They're not stemming the reproductive cycle of the animals. So it's probably a losing proposition.
Well, they caught the guy who set the cat on fire.
I saw that.
Now, this guy's 31 and has a pretty good criminal record. I'd say he'll add to his criminal record.
I'm sure.
I would say. Likely.
What is the crime on that? Would it be cruelty to
There
animals?
is a cruelty to animal statute. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Of course, there is a link between most of your, or at least a pretty large group of your serial killers, and animal cruelty as children. That's actually one of the pretty definite factors in most serial killers' backgrounds. So, cruelty to one thing is pretty easy to morph over into cruelty to something else. So he deserves whatever punishment is coming.
Did you see where the Polk County woman was arrested for 6 counts of voter bribery?
For narcotic pain pills or money?
Yeah, but votes go cheaper than they used to, don't they?
What was she doing?
You could get, as I read it, $15 or
a Xanax tablet.
pain pills. And I will tell you, I heard that back in the summer, that was going on.
Well, there's been a long tradition in Polk County of.
I will be surprised if that's the only arrest. I think that's just the first of maybe a longer list.
So next we're going to have to be checking IDs and doing
drug screens.
Drug screens for voting. Would you go along with that, Franklin?
Drug screens for voting? No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't go along for that?
Well, this is Tennessee, which means that about 35% of the population would flunk.
We're the highest
prescription drug abuse state in the country.
Wonder how does that come about? You think?
Actually, a lot of it's tied to TennCare. When TennCare revamped some of the systems and they started paying for more and more, people could go to the doctor and they could get prescriptions at no cost. Now, obviously, the doctors, are a big part of this. But it really exploded. It's the same thing we talked about. What's the cause of college tuition? Well, it's when the government started doling out more and more money, tuition started to see huge increases because there was more money available. People have to spend their own money. They're more careful with it. They get to spend someone else's money. They go for it.
I've had several people call me and talk to me about the amendments and said they're still not understanding those things. I thought maybe this morning we'd do another, a summary of the 4 amendments that's on the that they can vote for. Franklin, you want to start?
Well, the one that most people are talked about the most is Amendment 1. As John has covered, it's an attempt to respond to a Tennessee Supreme Court case from 10 to 12 years ago. It reads that the Tennessee Constitution will not be interpreted as providing any greater restriction on the right of the government to regulate abortion providing facilities. That's the literal language of it, essentially. So
I see a lot of signs that says "Vote Yes" Amendment 1.
Mm-hmm. It means if you want to approve that amendment,
you vote yes.
You vote yes. If you don't want to approve it, you vote no.
And the amendments to add to.
Well, it's a strange way of doing things, to be honest. It's the first time I've actually ever seen any state attempt to do what this amendment says, which is to put an amendment in a constitution saying what the Constitution means, which is a very unusual concept. Whether you like it or not, I'm not arguing that point.
It's because the Tennessee Supreme Court, which even though this is a conservative state, at obviously, and actually a Republican state, is still dominated 4-1 by the Democrats and liberals, and they interpreted the word private in the 1796 original language of the state constitution to mean that the government had no ability to restrict a woman's abortion.
Actually, what it actually
access.
said is that, first of all, I'll give you a little history. The Tennessee Supreme Court, not just this court, traditionally has always ruled that the Tennessee Constitution provided more protections for individual liberties than the national Constitution did. Not just that.
Who brought the case, Franklin?
Who brought
the case to the
it's
court?
Planned Parenthood.
Planned Parenthood. So, folks, keep that. First, I'll store that away.
As if
Planned
that means
Parenthood.
something. That means
it means
nothing.
a lot.
No,
Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in the country, brought the case.
The Tennessee Constitution's always been interpreted as having more protection for free speech, for example, freedom of association, the rights of people to assemble and protest and sort of things.
Right.
All those things that we associate with liberty, we have always ruled in our state that we had more protection than
a
people
medical procedure is equated with your right to protest the government.
No.
And you think that the original 1796 writers of our Constitution, when they wrote the word privacy, they intended it to include abortion.
What the Supreme Court ruled is that in matters of something that personal to someone,
All right.
that the state, meaning the state of Tennessee, has to have a compelling interest in order to overcome that individual's right.
You and I have argued over this before. Did their ruling give more or less abortion rights than Roe versus Wade?
It upheld the standard that's in
Is there a more liberal abortion rights ability in Tennessee under their ruling than the Roe versus Wade ruling?
It actually followed the Roe model.
You're not going to answer that, are you?
Because
you have more abortion rights
that's
in the
not
state.
true.
It is
That
true.
is not true.
Franklin, the state legislature cannot pass any regulation right now on abortion.
It does not.
Tell me one regulation that would hold up.
John,
give me one regulation that
I
would hold up.
challenge you to read that opinion and tell me where it says no regulations can be passed.
All right, let me
It's
ask
not
you a
what it
question,
says.
Franklin. Was there any regulation in place when they passed the ruling? Was there any regulations in place?
Sure.
All right.
There
Are they enforced
and there still
now?
Are
Are
some
they
regulations
effective?
in place.
Are they effective now?
One would assume so,
No,
since
they're
the number
not.
of abortions in
They are
Tennessee are less
absolutely
than there were
not.
25
That's something
years
you
ago.
don't want people to know. There was a parental notification law in effect. There was a licensure and inspection law in effect. Both of those are not being enforced now because of this ruling. So, folks, if you want a completely unregulated abortion operation in the state of Tennessee, if you want Tennessee to continue to be the number 3 abortion destination state in the country, if you want your underaged minor child to be able to go without parental notification and have an abortion, vote no.
If
you
anything
want to
John
have
was saying were true,
if you
it's
want to
not
have
true.
reasonable regulations over the abortion practice in Tennessee, please vote yes.
There are fewer abortions in Tennessee today than there were 20 years
Franklin,
ago.
we're
How did that happen?
25% of
How
our
did
people.
that happen?
Answer me this. Why are 25% of the abortions in Tennessee out of state of people? Why is Planned Parenthood?
Because in case you have forgotten geography, John, Tennessee happens to be a state that's surrounded by 7 other states.
Why would someone drive to another state to have an abortion if they could get it in their
Because
state?
if you're in a very rural area that happens to touch a very urban area in Tennessee, it's a lot closer.
So you mean Louisville, Kentucky is a rural area? Jackson, Mississippi is a rural area, and those women, because
First of all, Jackson,
folks,
Mississippi doesn't
congratulations,
touch
folks.
Tennessee.
Planned Parenthood now offers regular bus service from Mississippi, Arkansas, and Kentucky into Tennessee. And by the way, folks, Knoxville Abortion Clinic will give you a rebate if you're an out-of-state woman.
All right. I think we understand what Amendment 1 is.
Vote yes on Amendment 1 if you believe in supporting
Vote no
the right to life.
unless you believe the government knows more about you than you do. Vote no.
All right. Now then, let's talk about Amendment 2. John, you want to start that one?
Well, this one kind of goes both sides. The Republicans and the Democrats, to be honest, the establishment organizations want you to vote yes. I'm going to vote no on that. It won't really matter either way because right now, again, because of the same liberal Democrat Supreme Court, we are working under a system with our higher judges that's actually unconstitutional. So if you like the current system and you want to make it constitutional, even though they're doing it anyway, they're doing it even though they know it's not constitutional. But if you want to make it constitutional, then vote yes. If you, like me, think these judges ought to have to run for office like they did traditionally, like the original Constitution required, then vote no. Now, when you vote no, keep in mind, they're going to continue to do the unconstitutional method that they're doing. But at least a no vote will allow us to someday go, look, guys, you need to fix this. You need to go back to actually running for office like you're supposed to.
Okay. Is that correct, Franklin?
Well, it is correct that if you vote yes on the amendment number 2, that you will be ratifying a system where judges are appointed by the governor, approved by the elected legislature, and then will be subject to yes/no retention votes down the road.
Which is virtually a life appointment, because we have only voted one out of office in the history of this. This has only been being done since the early 70s. These judges all ran for popular elections like the Constitution. The Constitution, folks, says these judges, and this is the wording, shall be elected. Now, the liberal Democrat Supreme Court in the early 70s said that a yes-no retention vote qualified as an election. Once again, I don't think the writers of the Constitution in 1796 thought the word elected mean appointed and retention vote, but that's what we're doing.
It is interesting that in 1974, the Democratic dominated General Assembly in Tennessee passed a bill to require Supreme Court justices to be elected by the people, and it was vetoed by the Republican governor.
Well, I don't care. I'm against my party right now. They're saying vote yes. I think we ought to vote no. I think these guys ought to have to run for office. Because if you're going to make the argument that it puts too much politics in it, then ask yourself about the retention vote that you saw. All 3 of these Supreme Court justices touring the state, campaigning side by side, endorsing each other, which is a violation of their judicial canons, and attacking anybody that said you should vote no. You think there's no politics involved? At least if you had to run for election, the politics is open and visible.
Well, if you want a if you want a situation where outside money is dominating how our offices get elected, yeah, take
How
John's
much
view.
money did the vote yes retaining the 3 judges spend? They outspent the opposition, Franklin. There was all kinds of outside money that George Soros invested money in those retention of those 3 Supreme Court justices.
Well, as I have pointed
So you're
out,
okay with George Soros money coming into the state?
Actually, no, John, I'm not, because I have taken the position consistently, and I am consistent about this, in that we need to stop all of the outside money from coming in, no matter who it comes for.
Okay. We now understand Amendment 2. Let's talk about Amendment 3. Franklin, you want to head that one?
Is this the lottery one or the
No,
other one?
this is the income tax.
The income tax one. Well, it's very simply, it's to amend the Tennessee Constitution to say that no Tennessee state government can ever pass an income tax. That's what it says.
It is. The problem with that amendment is if you're not careful reading it, people will look at it, they'll see income tax, and they'll go, oh, I'm against that, I'll vote no.
It's not a bill to pass an income tax.
It's a bill to
amend the
outlaw.
Constitution to make it so that it could never have one.
To outlaw it, they need to vote yes.
If you are against an income tax, you vote yes on Amendment 3.
Did everyone hear that?
If you're against an state income tax, you vote yes on Amendment 3.
Okay. Let me ask, are both of you for a state income tax? Or against it, I mean?
I'm absolutely against it.
If you could replace the sales tax completely, I'd vote for the income tax.
Every state that has had a sales tax has actually rebounded much faster after economic downturns than the states that have income taxes.
I don't know what that means.
It means that our economy bounces back faster under a sales tax than it would under an income
then
tax.
our unemployment rate should be lower than the national average, and it's higher. That didn't make
Franklin,
any sense.
I'm just telling you, you can look the data up.
Well, I don't know what rebounding means if people don't have jobs.
Well,
What does that mean?
It's funny you say that. Governor Haslam, I've got an article here. He's questioning the high jobless rate in Tennessee.
He's actually not sure that the data's correct.
Changing the numbers. Okay.
Well, your guys have made a science out of that.
Cooking the books, is that what they call it?
You know how they revised those Obama numbers right before the election? Those good numbers came out, and then after the election they said, oh, by the way, we were a little bit enthusiastic there, and they weren't really that good. That kind of stuff.
Well, anyway, he's questioning the jobless rate at 7.4% in August. So anyway, I think it's kind of I'd say there's a lot of people signed up for disability and unemployment, and they're not interested in finding
Well, it's like
job.
the statistic.
Why would we have more of those in any other state then? I mean,
Well, why do we have more prescription drug fraud than any other state?
What are you saying? Tennesseans are naturally lazy?
No.
No,
We're
I'd
just
say
saying
that-
that
I'd say the
bureaucrats
yeah.
may be cooking the books, and that's
Right.
what Haslam's concerned
states-
about.
The state doesn't determine whether you get disability or not. The federal government does.
Well, that makes the problem even worse. Thanks for pointing that out. It's the feds, guys.
You go over to Social Security.
Yes, and apparently they only approve people in
Well,
Tennessee.
Franklin, it's like the White House bragging about the unemployment number when they know the number of people out of the workforce is at a 36-year high now, and if you put those people back in the workforce, the national unemployment rate would actually be around 11%.
Actually, what we really know is that the level of private sector job growth, that is, actual businesses creating job, has been very successful over the last 5 years.
It hasn't even kept up with population
what has
growth,
not
Franklin.
No, hold on a minute.
It hadn't even kept up with population growth.
That's not true.
Both of you hang-
Private
Both
sector
of you
job
hang on.
growth. What has not happened is government growth hasn't happened. It's actually smaller. So in other words, this president has actually done what you guys campaigned
when
for.
You do that. He ran it up under the stimulus, $800 billion, the largest
Those were
spending.
not government jobs, John.
They weren't anything, Franklin. They
Yes,
went to
they
his
were.
buddies and his cronies. He increased spending. He grew the government. And then when he cut back.
It would just be so helpful if you embraced some semblance of facts.
Franklin.
I mean, it's
like
all
his
myth
claim, It's
all
like
the time.
his claim that he's cut the budget. He cut the budget from the all-time high that he raised the budget to. And then he wants to brag about the cut. We're
5
still
consecutive
higher.
years, the deficit's fallen, hasn't it?
Franklin, the
Hasn't
deficit
it?
was increased by $1 trillion in 1 year, effectively.
Yes, that
And
would
then
be
he's
the
cut it
budget
back
before
by
he took office,
200
right?
Well, I was against that too, Franklin.
The point
Amazingly
is, John,
for me,
the
it's
deficit
about
has
the
fallen while
reality.
Obama's been
It has
president.
not fallen, Franklin. That is such a lie. It is such a manipulation
it's
of the
60%.
statistics.
How much has gas gone up since Obama's been in office? Now then, let's talk about it coming down now. But how much has it gone up since he went into office?
It's below the level of when he took
No,
office.
it's not. It was $1.89 when he took
Oh,
office.
John,
Look it up.
John,
It was
I'd be happy to
$1.89.
look that up.
It was
That is a total farce.
$1.89.
No, it's not, Franklin.
You're wrong, Franklin. It was
Well, it's in the
$1.89.
paper this morning. Read it.
Well, they're wrong too.
Oh, of course they are, John.
Just like the New York Times was wrong about weapons of mass destruction that they've now conveniently
I
corrected
love you
their
brought that up
position.
because what they've done is prove everything we've said.
Actually, they proved nothing that you
Yes,
said.
they did.
We got one more amendment.
Amendment 4. We got off on that one a little bit. Let's go to Amendment 4. Let's see. Whose turn is it? John, you go
It
ahead.
doesn't matter. Amendment 4 is a cleanup, basically. When they were doing some of these lottery and laws and bills, they listed who could have raffles and things like that. Well, the VFW, the American Legion, and I think Knights of Columbus and some organizations like that have for decades had raffles and things like that to raise money
Bingo.
for their charity things. The military groups were left out of the list of approved organizations. And so they've continued to do it, and the law basically has said, hey, you all can go ahead and do it. We're not going to arrest you. Well, that's not the way government ought to function. You shouldn't put a sheriff or a DA in a position to say, well, yeah, that's illegal, but we want you to look the other way. So this is a cleanup. Mm-hmm. This will add the veterans groups to the recognized list that are approved to have these charity lotteries.
I know through my experience in filing for one of these things every year, you're allowed one event.
Right, and you have to register it.
You have to register it.
Document everything.
You have to document it, and so This is not to have something going on every week.
Well, what's interesting about the actual language of the amendment, and if there's anything that would give you pause about it, is it basically says that the General Assembly can pass laws to do it. Because there's been a question about whether lotteries and such were permitted under the Tennessee Constitution. But it seems to imply that the legislature can, frankly, just pick and choose. That would be the concern I would have about the amendment. If the intent is to approve the VFW being able to have a raffle or the Boys Club being able to have a raffle, I'm all for that. But the specific language of the amendment to me is a little bit troubling in that sense, because it kind of gives me the impression that they can say, oh, we like this one, but not that one.
Let me ask you something. A lottery is a form of gambling, isn't it?
Sure it is.
Okay. What is wrong with a one-armed bandit? A slot machine then?
Well, I will tell you, I personally, I've seen the hypocrisy in this all along. I don't really think gambling is a particularly good thing for humans. I think it plays into the worst in human nature. And the way this has sort of been done was, if the state does it and gets the proceeds, then we're going to say it's legal. If a private entity does it, we're going to say it's illegal. Well, you know what? It's just as wrong for the state to prey on people's weaknesses than it is for a private, casino to prey on that.
But they offer counseling.
Well, every state lottery now this may be old, but a few years back, at 7 years, every single state lottery went actually in the red. Because what happens is they get this money coming in. Two things happen. Everybody buys it at first, and then slowly interest kind of wanes and the actual volume decreases. But the real problem is the legislature takes this money that they see as free money, and they start doling it out to political interest groups to buy votes. And they dole too much of it out, and every state at the 7-year mark has actually begun losing money with their lotteries.
How in the world can you lose money?
You give too much of it away. It only generates X amount. Georgia had to revamp their whole system. Tennessee got into that.
Georgia's excuse down there was they were giving it for the Hope Scholarship, and that.
Yeah, but here's the problem: you give a Hope Scholarship, and you say you got to have a 3.0 average to get the Hope Scholarship.
Right.
Now that is a colorblind number. That's just a number. But then some legislature comes up and they break the demographics down, and they go, not enough of this group or not enough of that group are getting it at 3.0. So in order to get that group or this group represented correctly, they drop it to 2.5. Well, some other group comes along, well, you're still not doing good enough. So they drop it to 2. Well, pretty soon everybody's getting the scholarship. The lottery's not generating enough money to cover it, and you end up in the hole, which is what happens. But my point is, just like you said, it's like Bradley County for years when I'm not a drinker, so I didn't care whether we got liquor by the drink or not. Now, you had other arguments about the types of restaurants and all it would bring, but my point was, how ridiculous is it of us as a county to say that if your daughter gets killed by a drunk driver, it's different if he was drunk on beer rather than drunk on liquor? If my daughter gets killed by a drunk driver, I don't care what he was drunk on. So I always had that problem with that. We're going to allow beer sales, but we're not going to allow liquor sales. If you really are anti-alcohol, anti-drinking, then we should be a real dry county. Wouldn't bother me. I won't miss it. I'll vote for it. So let's be honest about what we're doing. If you're against gambling, we ought to be against all gambling. We shouldn't have had the lottery put in place. If you're for gambling, then what's wrong with the slot machine?
Should we be able to play bingo?
Obviously, that's the other thing. We wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We allowed bingo. Everybody looked the other way for years.
Bingo's just a fun game, and now they've just taken it totally away. I mean,
well, then you get into this. We don't allow betting on football games unless, of course, it's the 800 number in Vegas that you're calling, and then we do allow it. Or, it's silly.
Yeah.
If you're going to do something, do it. If you're not going to do it, don't do it.
Let's take a break. We'll be back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into Checking to cash.
The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or pawn today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Ready, set, grow. Join Ron and Debbie Moore every Saturday in October from 9 to 9:45 a.m. along with the Bradley County Master Gardeners, a UT agricultural extension program. Call in to get tips on fall planting, lawn care, and pruning. Join Ron and Debbie Moore for Make It Grow every Saturday in October, 9 to 9:45 a.m. only on Whoop FM.
Friday. Come one, come all to the Cleveland Speedway. That's right, race fans, are you ready for the thrill of down-home, high-speed, no-hold-back racing? Get ready for the all-new Cleveland Speedway. This Friday, racing comes back to Cleveland. It's time to get your dirt on. An all-new track, an all-new grandstand, and an all-new racing experience. The Cleveland Speedway this Friday. Bring the entire family. Gates open at 6:30. Racing starts at 7:30. If you love dirt track racing, get ready for the all-new Cleveland Speedway. This Friday, racing returns to Cleveland Speedway. Don't miss it. See you this Friday at the Cleveland Speedway. Friday.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
There we go. All right, we're back live here in the studio. We had a couple of things we want to clean up here before we get off on another topic, and it was there's another vote on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Well, if you live in the city, there's a vote on whether you want to permit wine in grocery stores.
All right, that's got to be a big deal. Some of the grocery stores around here.
Is that a simple majority vote, Franklin?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. It's on the ballot now, but it's
on the ballot.
Only in the city. It's not on the county ballot, as I understand it.
But it's on the ballot. It doesn't become legal after this, or does it?
It does.
It does. It will.
The legislation was passed to allow each municipality or county
to hold
their own localized vote on it. Okay. And if it passes, then it's authorized.
So it's on the ballot. So
it is.
If you want wine in Cleveland, vote yes, right?
Well, if you want
wine
Walmart,
wine in grocery
Cooks
stores,
and Buy Low to have a wine section, then you vote yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do need to explain the four amendments. There's an odd way that those pass or fail. And the really odd part about this is they could win a majority of the vote and still fail to pass. And people hear that and they go, I don't understand how that works. they have to receive 50% of the total votes cast in the governor's race plus one vote. So just to make it simple, if 1 million people vote in the governor's race, and it doesn't matter who you vote, if you vote for anybody, if you vote, they take that total, let's say it's 1 million people, then for one of these amendments to pass, it has to get 500,001 vote. So if people go in and they vote in the governor's race and they don't vote for any of these amendments, it's the same thing as voting no, because you've raised the threshold for what these amendments have to pass, but you haven't cast a vote for or against them. So a vote in the governor's race and a blank ballot on these amendments is the same thing as voting no on all these amendments.
That's pretty confusing. Why is it set up that way?
Because they want a high threshold for it. You don't want to be messing with your Constitution on a regular basis. Yeah. It's like the recall election you saw in Chattanooga.
That's the answer. It's supposed to be difficult to change the Constitution.
You know, these the reason the recalls are having trouble across the country is because the public used to view recalls as a very rare thing and it really has to be bad to use the recall. Well, now people have started using these recall procedures much more regularly. So you've got cities going, hey, we need to make the recall procedure harder. That's why this constitutional procedure is harder, because they don't want you to be meddling in the Constitution on a regular basis. So, again, folks, please go read those 4 amendments. If you're for or against them, it's your right to vote either way. But if you leave them blank and you vote in the governor's race, you voted no on all of them.
Very confusing, but anyway, I hope we made it clear to everyone about the amendments and what's going on the ballot. Early voting, is that
it's going on?
Still going on, so It's not too late to get out and go vote.
I've already cast my ballot.
Go to Polk County.
Huh?
You need a Xanax, go to Polk County, cast your vote.
I got to ask, what about the 3 girls that were Americans headed over to join ISIS? What
the ones from out, Colorado or I think
somewhere. I just heard about this.
I just heard about it yesterday. I saw it yesterday, but I did not read the story.
I mean, what in the world is going on in our country for something like this?
The telling thing those 3 girls and people like it should read is that there were 2 or 3 European girls who attempted to do this. And they got a
real dose of reality.
They got a dose of reality, and now they're not being allowed to leave when they want to, and they're pretty unhappy with their current circumstance.
They were Germans, as I remember it.
Yeah.
All right, I want to put your headsets on. I'm going to play something for us to kind of stir things up a little bit here, maybe. All right, here we go.
For the first time in 6 years, unemployment is below 6%.
This is the new Donna pep rally.
The housing market that was reeling is now rebounding. An auto industry that was wheezing is now roaring going forward. A manufacturing sector that was shedding jobs for more than a decade is now growing at nearly twice as fast as the rest of the economy. We are less dependent on foreign oil than at any time in nearly 3 decades. 6 years ago, only 2 states allowed everybody to marry whoever they love. Now it's more than 30. About 10 million Americans have gained the peace of mind of health insurance.
Anyway, this was a speech that Mr. Obama was making, saying all these things, and a lot of people got up and just walked out.
Yeah, by the way, Facebook has now pulled that story from their posting because they've said that it's spam.
It's spam.
He got heckled in that rally, and apparently a significant number of people got up and walked out.
Right.
And it was posted on Facebook as a news story, but they pulled it, and now if you try to click on it, it says that this was spam, and you're not allowed to pull the story up.
Wait a minute, Franklin, what are you looking at me for?
I don't know what you would be heckling. In fact, manufacturing has increased.
These were his people. This isn't us. You can't be mad at us.
I'm not talking about that. They have a right to heckle if they want to, but I'm saying that's a factual statement. Manufacturing has turned around. It's doing much better than it was 10 years ago.
Manufacturing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you might argue about what the causes of those are, but that's a fact.
I don't know that anything has helped or hurt manufacturing, has it?
Well,
China. Has that helped us?
There's been changes in our import policies. We've put some more restrictions on what China's brought in. China's also had several blows. The lead issue in their toys really devastated some of their toy imports. There's a lot of things involved in that. The big thing is, I've said this before, if Franklin and the Democrats want to run on the wonderful economy that Obama has created, I am more than happy for them to run on that.
I don't, I understand that we can do a better job. And
Here's
I
a better
get that,
question. Why would
but
Facebook pull the story about people walking out on him?
I don't know.
Why is it that this president is so delicate that he has to be protected by the mainstream media?
But what I do know is that, yes, the unemployment rate's falling. Yes.
How many people have dropped out of the workforce?
Yes, GDP.
How many people have dropped out of the workforce, falling. Franklin?
I don't know what you'd run against.
It's the lowest participation rate in the workforce since 1976. If you add those people back in, unemployment is over 10%.
And once again, if you distinguish between private sector jobs and public sector jobs,
Franklin,
the private sector ones have been growing.
Frank, let me say one thing, then I want to take a phone call. I think under the Obama administration, we can't believe anything he puts out. Let's take this call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Good morning, Steve, and everybody there. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, man.
I just got a question for you, for your panel. I don't want to change the subject, but what should who dropped the ball this scare about Ebola and what should have done been about it?
Well, we should have a travel ban. Let me think. I think there's over 30 countries that now have travel bans. Nearly every African country has a travel ban. We've got South American countries have them. We've got France has them. We have Britain has them. British Airways has quit flying in there. Anybody with any common sense knows that through the history of the world, quarantine and banning sick people from mixing with healthy people is an effective tool. But it's not politically correct for this administration, so they're not willing to do it.
Well, I appreciate you guys.
All right, my man.
By the way, the new czar isn't attending the hearing this Friday by the House committee on how the government will coordinate the Ebola response.
Now say that again.
The guy that he just appointed, by the way, the political hack who was in charge of the Solyndra debacle, who is a paid lobbyist and has zero medical experience, has now announced that he will not be attending the House Oversight Committee hearing on Friday, which the title of the hearing is The Ebola Crisis Coordination of a Multi-Agency Response. So the czar, in charge of the government response, says he doesn't have time to attend the committee hearing on Friday.
What's he going to do then?
Well, the answer
his
from the
job.
No, actually, the answer from the White House.
Circus.
This is a Democrat. The Democrats invited him, Franklin.
Let me give you an example.
The Democrats invited him.
Here. It was really interesting today. You remember Rand Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. Rand Paul gave a big speech and said all this stuff about Ebola and this travel ban stuff was just political grandstanding, that it didn't have any meaningful effect on the issue at all. Now, he's a doctor. Oh, we wouldn't care about that.
Ophthalmologist. He's an eye doctor.
Eye doctors are doctors.
Actually, I think he's an ophthalmologist, which is not a medical doctor. I'm not arguing, but frankly,
I'm just saying there's all kinds of purported experts in this area.
Franklin, let me calm you down just a minute.
I'm not.
No, wait a minute.
It's just
so are the 30 countries racist?
Wait a minute.
I didn't say anything about racism.
Well, the White House did. If you oppose a travel ban, you're racist.
Can I get a question in? The majority of the Americans want the
travel ban.
Why can't our president just step up and do something?
That's a good comment, Steve. The answer is the president's job isn't to do what's popular; it's to do what works. That's his job.
You think putting a ban on is not going to work?
Not if you can't enforce it. And you can't enforce it.
Well, that's because he won't close the southern border. That's making our case that we've made for years.
No, it's not. The point is,
why are the 30 other
first off, Franklin,
putting a ban on?
How does a non-U.S. citizen come to America? How does a non-U.S. citizen come to America?
It depends on where they start coming from.
Well, what do they have to come here?
presumably a visa.
So who issues the visa?
Well, you don't have to have
Who
a
issues
wait a
the
minute,
visa?
John. Wait a minute. You don't have to have a visa to come for a vacation.
Who issues visas for these people, Franklin?
That's if you're coming to stay. It doesn't stop you from coming on a visit.
Franklin, it most certainly does.
John, have you been to Europe?
No,
you don't
let
have
me
to have a
explain this
visa
to you,
go
Franklin.
there.
If you shut the visa process down for people coming from Ebola countries and you shut them down coming for vacations, which they have no constitutional right as non-citizens to come here, Senator McCain put forward an idea. He said all you do is you put a 21-day waiting period. If you're in Liberia and you want to come here, you got to go into quarantine for 21 days. At the end of the 21 days, you can come here. That's just common sense, Franklin.
Who's going to enforce that?
We are.
No, how do you do the 21 days? That's my question. How do you do it?
Well,
how do you know they've been in quarantine?
Because you put them in quarantine.
You're going to keep
Yes,
them here.
you offer the space, you offer everything to them. Because how much did it cost for us to treat the one guy that got in here? So what's the cost of that versus the cost of, Lord, maybe we go down there and we rent a hotel in Liberia and we say, this is the hotel. You come in here, you stay for 21 days, and when you're clear, then we'll let you come to America. That would be less expensive than what it cost us to treat the one guy, not to mention the fact that he's now infected 2 more people.
Yes, we've been dealing with this now for 6 to 8 months, this crisis, and 3 people have gotten it.
Well, let me explain this
That
to you,
would
Franklin.
suggest to me that the system's working pretty well.
That's 3
actually.
people that didn't need it. And for your example, Franklin, the Texas hospital that treated that guy is closed to new admissions. So if you get 3 cases in Chattanooga out of 340,000 people, that's a minuscule amount. And a good liberal like you who's more interested in defending this lame president would say, oh my gosh, that's only 3 people. Well, guess what? One of them goes to Erlanger, one of them goes to Park Ridge, and one of them goes to Memorial. You just shut down all 3 emergency rooms in the 3 hospitals in the city of Chattanooga. So when you have that car wreck, or you have that person that's diagnosed with cancer and he's having a bleed out, where's he got to go? Because you just closed all 3 hospitals. That's the problem with a disease like Ebola. And by the way, the White House has on record that the appointment of the Ebola czar is because he's a good communicator. That's how they picked him. They said, well, he's a really he's good at messaging. And that's the real problem here. Instead of having a president that's looking at this and going, how do I effectively manage this to protect the American citizen, he's worried about his messaging.
Well, all I know, Americans would like to have this done. And we don't listen.
Well, for example, the little nurse. We waited 24 hours before we released the nurse's name. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand there's privacy issues here. But the point is, in the past, like when we had a real problem with, for example, syphilis, we announced that. We took those people, we contacted everybody they had contact with, and we quarantined that person, and we tried to keep them from having sex with other people. That's how we got syphilis under control. That's how we got most of the venereal diseases under control. So the little nurse that got that, why would you not announce her name immediately so you could catch all of the people she had contact with? We waited 24 hours. In 24 hours, the people she had contacted more and more and more people.
Well, anyway, Mr. Obama
And by the way, Franklin, the White House has said that if you oppose the travel ban, you're racist. Congressional Democrats have gone on the nightly news and said you're a racist if you support travel bans. So apparently, all of the countries in Africa that have enacted travel bans are all racist countries.
I saw where Mr. Obama called in to. I'm going to take a call. Let's take a call real quick. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hello.
Yo.
I got a comment and a question for John and Franklin.
Okay.
Either one of them or you, have you all heard about General Motors closing their operations down in Mexico?
Turn your radio down just a little bit.
General Motors closing down their operation in Mexico.
Okay.
I read a little bit about it, not much.
Okay, well, I was wondering, about I know that General Motors, when they shut down and the government bailed them out, and first one thing and another, a lot of people lost a lot of money, including myself. But the progress that's made there, is that progress coming from General Motors itself, or is it coming from the government, or is it coming from the heads of General Motors? Who's that coming from?
Say that question one more time.
The progress on what?
Yeah.
Progress of them coming out of Mexico, shutting their Mexican manufacturers down there, because the part that I read, if I read it correctly, they told them that if you manufacture it down there in Mexico, then you have to sell it down there.
Well, the GM is moving the operations of one of their new Cadillac vehicles to Tennessee, by the way. And it's my understanding that they have worked out an arrangement with the UAW in Tennessee, who has organized that plant over there for some wage concessions and so forth in exchange for more jobs.
Saturn location?
Yes.
One of the reasons we get those plants is because we're a no-income tax state, by the way.
Going to move about 1,800 jobs here is what I understand.
Well, are we going to get our Marine back at the same time that's over there in the Mexican prison?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Well, the president would have to ask first, and since he hasn't asked,
those two things obviously are linked together, of course.
Well, there are a lot of problems in Mexico. The drug cartels and some of the instability has been a problem for some of these plants. You've got a lot of violence, and that causes trouble for them. There's a lot of political instability. A lot of times there's payoffs and kickbacks, and that I hate to say that a company doesn't mind making payoffs and kickbacks, but unfortunately most of them probably don't. The problem is you can't predict that stuff. And companies really don't like unpredictable environments.
I'd say that's probably the answer.
And from what I understood, the quality is not as good from the Mexican worker. American workers are some of the highest quality workers in the world.
Their steel is terrible.
Right.
Anything else, caller?
That's all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, man. A lot of the steel coming out of Mexico is just absolutely terrible. I mean, a lot of these screws and stuff are coming out now.
And what you're seeing is there were a lot of companies that outsourced jobs to foreign plants thinking they were saving money. Turns out they really weren't saving money. Not in the long term, because their product quality went down.
Let's talk about why companies are going overseas and establishing corporations now.
Because the corporate income tax is too high.
Interestingly enough, both the president and the Republican Party have come out for reducing the corporate tax rate. It still hadn't got passed.
Well, the problem is the president's been saying that every time he was up for re-election, but he's never proposed it. He's never sent it to Congress.
Can the Congress send him a bill?
Actually, the House has 1,400 bills, and that's one of them.
Has the House passed a bill
they have.
lowering the corporate tax rate?
They have, and the Senate, under Harry Reid and the Democrats' control, won't bring it up for a vote. It has to pass both houses, Franklin. And that's one of the 1,400 bills that the House Republicans have passed. They've passed all kinds of bills that Harry Reid won't bring up for a vote. By the way, the Koch brothers, Franklin might appreciate this. Harry Reid's always talking about how horrible the Koch brothers are. They are now, this is their next dastardly deed. They are now going to finance a program to provide scholarships and training for public defenders. They're giving a grant that would pay for a review of indigent defense programs to see what works in providing legal representation to those who can't afford it. That's the evil Koch brothers.
Well, I will say this to you. I read some statistics the last few days, and this cuts across both parties, by the way. I'm going to use North Carolina as an example. They're on the verge of having the most expensive United States Senate race in the history of the country. They're about to have spent more than $100 million on the Senate race. And guess what? The projections right now is that $80 million of that $100 million is going to have come from outside sources, not residents of North Carolina. That's a crappy system we got.
Well,
going.
actually, the Democrats have
No,
outspent the
both
Republicans.
ways.
I know.
John.
I just want
see. This is
Franklin.
This
I'm
is
not
This
fussing.
is the problem. You can't get past
No,
that.
you're listening.
When I'm
I
telling
didn't.
you
Did I
that
criticize
we're
it? I
equally-
just.
Well, no.
I put it out as a fact.
That's what you got to say. Oh, it's the Democrats.
Well, yeah,
No,
the
it's
reason
both
I do
parties.
that, Franklin, is because the mainstream media regularly says this is a Republican big spending problem. The Democrats have actually outspent us on outside money than they have.
What we've got right now is, unfortunately, our politics is billionaires battling other billionaires rather than the people doing it.
Let me ask you this. Should Mr. Obama go to 53 fundraisers in 1 year on our taxpaying dollar?
Till we change the system, yes.
Well, he said he wouldn't do that originally. He said he was against it and wouldn't do it. Wouldn't take any of that money. But then apparently when his actual reelection came up, he just threw all of that aside, Franklin. And by the way, I don't have as much problem with the big money coming in. I do have a problem with people like the Hagan, the Democrat senator over in North Carolina, running flyers showing black people being lynched and saying if she doesn't win, they're going to impeach Obama and lynch black people. That's the level that the Democrats stoop to. Oh, of course, you've got down in Georgia, Michelle Nunn running photographs of her and George H.W. Bush together, even though H.W. has specifically asked her not to. Now, I will remind you that when Tom Petty asked Mitt Romney not to use one of his songs at campaign rallies, even though Mitt Romney had actually purchased the licensing agreement from ASCAP to be able to use the sign, Mitt Romney said, I will respect your request. I won't run it anymore, and he didn't. But Michelle Nunn runs pictures of her and H.W. Bush together, even though she has been directly asked not to.
It's going to get so dirty. It's going to be unbelievable before the next presidential election. Unbelievable. Anything y'all want to finish up with this morning? Anything hot on your minds?
Franklin?
I guess I'd like to know where Congressman Desjardins is.
You know, I got a call from him last night.
Did you?
I got a mailer from him last week.
He's made one campaign appearance in 3 months.
He's actually battling cancer.
He finished his treatment in August,
Well,
according to his campaign. That's not my statement.
I'm
That's
not
his
arguing
campaign.
with you, but he's
One
battling
campaign
cancer.
One campaign appearance. Well, is
I
he up
didn't
to
know he
doing the
was
job?
battling
I don't
cancer.
know.
Huh?
He's battling
Yes,
cancer.
he's had cancer.
His
He's been
campaign
undergoing
announced that he had
treatment.
some sort of cancer back in the summer, that he was undergoing treatment for that, but then they announced that he completed it in August.
So, I mean, what you're wondering where he's been?
Yeah.
Who's he running against?
Linda Sherrill.
Who is she?
She is the former chief financial officer for the Macaulay School in Chattanooga.
And she has a lot of good help.
She's a CPA. She used to do corporate audits for Life Care.
Just so y'all know, even though she's
married to a doctor,
even though she's running and saying she's a moderate, the Democratic National Committee has hired a young lady from Berkeley University in California to come out and run her campaign out here and help. That's who's been putting the signs up and stuff like that. So, folks, if you want to support a Berkeley, California liberal-style politician, then vote for her.
Well,
but if you want someone who is the fourth most conservative voting record in the United States, vote for Desjardins.
Well, if you have said that you're the kind of person who votes for the person, not the party, then I think you'd vote for Linda Sherrill, who's done everything right in her life.
What kind of person gets a Berkeley, California college student to come all the way across the country to work for her, paid for by the DNC?
Of course, John, because if somebody's from somewhere else, they must be evil. Of course, that makes perfect sense.
But Berkeley, California is probably the most liberal college campus in the country.
Have you met the young lady?
Yes, she's a very sweet girl. Hard worker.
Oh, she's a sweet, hard-working girl, but she's evil.
I didn't say
well,
that.
I mean, what are you
said
saying?
That, Franklin. That's what you all think about that, Franklin.
You're making the assertion.
No.
That
You listen to me.
No,
just to say. Hold on a second. I didn't say that. You did. You put that word in my mouth, which is a slur and a slander, and that's the way liberals run. You can't win on the facts.
John,
I simply point out that is a long way to come, and that is a very liberal part of the country. And so you add the word evil to it. You add the word evil to it just to smear what I'm saying. That's the same thing as if you oppose Ebola, you're racist. You people can't win an argument, so you attack the person.
Oh, we are winning the argument,
Actually,
John.
you're not. You're going to lose everything.
Beep, 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 boop, boop. Bye-bye. See you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music